Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. I'm trying to get the channel's numbers up. Tonight I want to talk a little about a pet peeve of mine as a DM, and that's the fact that when you're playing with experienced role players, you inevitably run into the problem with that some of them have read various adventure materials out there just out of their sheer curiosity. And especially after everyone having so much free time over the last year and a half, and with book sales going up, I would kind of imagine that's a bit of an issue, if you consider it as such, that can be encountered out there when you're trying to run adventure modules or anything published. Your players might already be familiar with the material, and being the little know-it-alls that they are, they'll try to, second guess everything you're doing and position themselves to, take advantage of their knowledge and not necessarily use it in a scripted fashion. I feel that there's not necessarily anything wrong with a player who's read an adventure module or have even played through an adventure module playing through it again, as long as they remember to distance themselves from, what the character knows versus what they know, but they can still use their information. Like I said, it's almost like they have a script for what the movie or TV show is, so that they know to take certain actions as long as they remain in character. And like I said, they're not just taking advantage of it for personal gain. But another thing you can do is to use that against them. You can set them up so that they think one thing is happening, and then you completely undermine them, especially when you're using more obscure modules. And so what I'm going to propose here is a little bit of subterfuge on your part if you're a dungeon master and are looking to do something like this. You'll need 3 books beyond the core edition of D&D that you're using. I'm setting this up as if it's going to be a 5th edition, which kind of leans into what I'm doing here. So anyways, you'll have your basic 5th edition, your 3 core books: Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, DMG. You'll also want to use Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, because you're going to be telling your players that this is what they're going to be running as, so they'll be making characters with some of these guidelines. You'll want to add something in from one of these other books during character creation, though. I'll get to that in a second. What you will tell them, though, is that you're going to be using Ravenloft to adapt the Isle of Dread, which you can get a really large, very nice, fully fleshed out adventure module from Goodman Games for about 35 to 40 bucks new on Amazon. In and of itself worth it. This is actually one of the best campaign modules that's currently on the market that you can use, that's already written for 5th edition, since this is an updated version. But what you're actually going to be doing with this is you'll have your Ravenloft characters. They'll land on a beach. Maybe they, will wake up on the beach after a shipwreck and a storm in the night, something along those lines. And for the most part, you'll have them run through this adventure unmodified, sort of. The thing is this adventure module is a false front, because what you're really throwing these 5th edition Ravenloft characters into is this. Venger Satanis's The Islands of Purple Haunted Putrescence. Now, this is a very gonzo, grimdark kind of adventure module. And in some ways, doing all this way is helpful for this, because it gives a contextual setup for what drags the characters and into the locations and events that you can have happen to them using this. Now, there's 2 charts in here early on that you're going to want to rely on a lot. You'll want to do your best to never let your players see this at all until they're very, very deep into the campaign, multiple sessions in. But at the very beginning, while they're making their characters, there's a chart in here for dark secrets that characters can have. Now, what I would say do is rewrite them down on a sheet of paper and make it look like they're just dark secrets that you have come up with. Maybe you can change a few of them around to tailor them to whatever ideas you have for campaigns and whatnot. Have them roll for their random dark secret to go with their dark power and the other stuff that comes out of Ravenloft. And as the game progresses, anytime that they are privy to the effects of magic, where they're meaning that they're playing a character that can cast magic, or they're witness to an NPC or creature that's using magic, you'll use the chart in here for purple magic to create some special effects. Slowly, the more purple magic is used in the setting, you'll start to slowly bleed in a few of the kind of Gonzo Cthulian techno kind of stuff that's in here. At your discretion, I mean, you want to read through this thoroughly and decide exactly what it is out of here that you're going to want to use. But by the time that the characters get to like the central little plateau in the middle of the island and the lake in the middle of the plateau, that's the point where you're going to break reality on them. You'll want to make sure that you'll lean into any plot hooks that are available early on in the game that will get them interested in going to that island, maybe making them assume that that's where they're going to find like the central villain of this little domain of dread that they're in so they can escape it, or some other central goal as to why they need to get to that island. The thing is once they climb up the plateau, instead of, finishing off the rest of this adventure module, you can just go ahead and toss it out. And that's, as they crest the last little bit of rock and pull themselves up on top of the plateau, they're in a different reality now. You switch over to this base map. You can decide where exactly it is that they emerge on the shores of one of the islands described in this book, and then just run through this. You'll want to kind of find some sort of connecting thread, villain-wise, from this to lead and tie into events from the Isle of Dread. And, like, it's open-ended enough, like, you can do what you want with it. This is still basically kind of a hex crawl in much the same way that Isle of Dread is kind of designed to be a hex crawl. It just, it'd be a interesting, like I said, it's a subterfuge, so that they think they're doing one thing, and then suddenly they get ramped into this extreme Cthulian nightmare of a setting that they were not anticipating at all, because they just think they're just going to be playing a classic goofy D&D adventure module where they're on a tropical island fighting some dinosaurs. They're not expecting tentacles from the sky and crashed starship remains and other bits of weirdness. Anyway, that's about all I really have to say about that. This is just a concept for other people to use. I purchased this a couple years ago, just while like looking at a bunch of different, adventure modules out there that were, not mass market, as my first encounter with Venture Satanis, his writings. And well, as I appreciate this, I'm not myself prone to running Gonzo games, so I'm not likely to ever use it. However, that doesn't mean I still can't have ideas for how it could be used and how others might be able to gain a little bit of enjoyment out of this. And it's worth picking up. Just because, if anything, it's like I said, it's a great example of like some extreme Gonzo grimdark fantasy kind of stuff going on in here. And that's, once again, that's the Islands of Purple Haunted Putrescence. I happened to pick it up on Amazon. I'm pretty sure they do have it on like DriveThruRPG too. I'd have to double check that. And it's not like I have a research department or the ability to hit pause and Google things myself before I talk about them in a YouTube video. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Also just, like, putting these two things together is sacrilegious on multiple levels to both parties. The people who make this don't want you pairing it with this. And the guy who wrote this, he might have some thoughts about people pairing it with this. And I think that's fun. So anyway, tell me below in the comments what a terrible, terrible idea this is. I'm pretty sure you have something negative to say about Venger. You might have something negative to say about Wizards of the Coast. I would love to hear about it. So tell me down there. Hit like and subscribe. Ring the bell. Sign over the rights to your pets. Send me some pics of your wife. I don't know. I'm up to anything. Hit me up on Twitter at PartySkills. And be sure to stay waspinated.